talk to you a little bit about what it is in general, and then I'm going to let my students take over and tell you about how it's played out in our classroom, what it looks like in our room when we do project-based learning. So mine's a little bit more general, theirs is a little bit more specific. The basis of PBL, if you're not familiar at all, you can see in the center of this diagram is significant content, so it is standards-based. I know that is a fear that a lot of people have when they hear about projects and they hear about project-based learning. They think these projects look really great, but how are the standards being taught, and are they all being taught? And so if you're really following the model of project-based learning, that's what you start with. You do start with your standards in the center and start planning from there, as well as 21st century skills. So we're going to kind of follow this diagram around, and I'm going to touch on each of the different elements of true project-based learning. So the first one is in-depth inquiry. The key to in-depth inquiry is that students are required to discover the meaning rather than being front-loaded with the meaning. This is a really huge shift, at least it was for me. So when I start something in the very beginning of a unit, I think of these are all the things that my students don't know, but if they're really going to get this and they're really going to get into this, they're going to have to know and understand these things. And then I start teaching them those things. So this is a little bit different in that you're kind of letting the kids discover some of those things. It doesn't mean you can never teach them anything. There are always going to be things that you have to teach, but it's sort of a different way of going about it where you're creating opportunities for them to be, you have to structure those opportunities, but you create opportunities for them to be able to discover some of that meaning themselves. I have a couple of technology tools just for each one of these. How many people in here use Evernote? Only a couple. Okay, so Evernote, there's a few, there's a handful. Evernote is a great tool. I think I have the icon on here. Evernote's a great tool that if you've ever seen the elephant icon, that is a great tool to use. I use it, but a lot of my students in this class, but I have other project-based learning classes too, a lot of them when they're doing research in different projects, they'll use Evernote to organize what they're doing. The great thing about Evernote is that if you have other devices or if my kids are at school and they take notes in Evernote, they can go to the public library if they don't have a computer at home, and they can still access all of their same notes and everything. They can take pictures in Evernote, they can put videos in Evernote, they can have all of that stuff. They can organize it into, it's kind of like, file folders that you have in a file cabinet. They can have different notebooks, is what they call it in Evernote. So that's just a simple, easy tool that we use. And then WordSift is a tool that I will show you real quick as my internet comes up here, and I'll just tell you about it. Okay, so WordSift is a great tool that if you have a very large piece of text, you have something that's pretty lengthy, and you want your students to be able to kind of enter that text in an easier way, then WordSift is a tool you can use. What you would do is you copy whatever it is. Let's say you have a 10-page article, and you know that that's going to be pretty difficult for your students to get through a 10-page article. You can copy all the text that's in that article and paste it in this box. I'm going to do one that's just automatically set up here. This is I Have a Dream. So it automatically pasted all of that text in there. You can click Sift. See if it works. And it comes up and gives you a beautiful word cloud at the top and tells you, obviously, the words that are larger. These are the words that appear within that article, the most frequent. The more frequent they appear, the larger the word appears. So the word freedom is the largest. That's the word that appears the most in this article. It also will give you a visual thesaurus. So notice it's got the word freedom, but if I click on a different word, it will repopulate. And it will populate pictures, internet pictures that match that word, and it will repopulate the visual thesaurus. The part that I like the most is whatever word that I've highlighted up there at the bottom, it will put every sentence in the entire piece that you pasted in there. Every sentence comes up. And then if you want to go and see where that sentence is in the actual article, you click on it and it will highlight it really large for you so you can see where that actually is in the text. So it's kind of a great way to take something that's really large and be able to make it a little bit more manageable. My kids we haven't used this in this class, and they're sitting over here like, what? But an entry event. So an entry event is what comes at the beginning of any PBL project. You have something that breaks the routine, that sparks interest, that raises questions. So you want it to be something that's exciting for the students, that's different, it breaks the norm. My 6th grade class, it can be something really simple. We walked just from our classroom to the public library, and the library had a presentation for us there with a project we were doing about heroes. It was the perfect place for us to go because where we ended up at the end of our project, we displayed and we had a presentation night at the library, so it was the perfect place for us to start. But it can be as simple as a movie, video that you create. It can be a field trip, which is going to be the kids' favorite, of course, because it gets them out of the classroom. It can be a guest speaker, having somebody come in that's going to have to do with your project, having someone come in and speak to you. It can be a letter from a community partner. We're going to talk about community partners in a second. I'm going to give you some examples from a sample entry event that we did with our Unlock class. Was we went to a place called Newton's Attic. I'm sorry, Miss Trees, that was the best. I had a close-up picture of you. All the pictures of the kids were like too far away. So this is a place we went to in Lexington called Newton's Attic. We had a presentation one day to wrap up something that we were doing. And so on that same day, we were already in really close to Lexington. So we took the kids to a place called Newton's Attic. This that she's sitting in is actually a homemade roller coaster that an engineer has built and has on this property. And the kids, you can see over here, they have a huge catapult. And then they were able to go, they took them in the shop and they actually made things inside the shop as well. This was a great entry event because you're going to hear about a project that they're working on right now, which is a really big deal. And it's transforming a bus. And you're going to hear a lot about that, so I don't want to steal their thunder. But this was a great segue because this was just something very, very creative that this guy had done on this property. And it was a great segue for us to lead into the creativity that the kids are going to have to use when we're doing our bus project, which you'll hear more about. I mentioned that you could use a video. So this is an example entry event. I'll play part of it. This was an 8th grade project that I did. And so their focus was on something that they could do to provide a service, like a service learning kind of. And so some of the things that you'll see in the video, I made it myself rather than go on YouTube and find one because I wanted something that I knew my kids were going to connect with. And so I put pictures of people in here that we already talked about in our classroom. So you'll see a picture of a guy in here named Brian, or I forgot his last name actually. So a guy named Brian who when he was in elementary school in 1st grade, he actually raised enough money to go to Africa and build a well. It was a pretty big deal because he thought at first it was going to take a few $100s. That's what he was told. He raised that much money, and then when he got ready to turn it in, they did some more research and found out it was going to take about $2,000 to build a well. So his parents were like, "Brian, you did such a great job. We'll just turn this money in, and somebody else can add to it." And he said, "No, I'm going to do the whole thing." And so he was in about 1st grade and ended up raising all the money. He now has his own organization called Ryan's Wells. So there's a picture of him. So all of the people that are in this video are people that my students recognize because they're people that we had talked about in our class. So I'm going to play a little bit of this video for you just to give you an idea. So this is an example, another example.
Something here is wrong. There are children without homes, but we just move along to take care of our own. There's so much suffering just outside our door. A cry so deafening, but we just can't ignore.
We also done a unit on child labor.
All the people who are fighting for the broken, all the people who keep holding on to love, all the people who are reaching for the lonely, keep chasing.
So entry events can come in many different shapes and forms. That was an example of video entry, field trip entries, guest speakers, but anything to break the norm and spark some excitement in your students and get them to be thinking about what it is you're going to do. They didn't know what our project was. So after we watched this entry event, I asked them to start telling me, what do you think our next project is going to have to do with? And they start saying, well, we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to make a difference. We're going to have, and so you kind of, it's called leaving breadcrumbs. You leave a trail of breadcrumbs to try to get your kids to try to begin to understand what it is you're going to do, what you're about to embark on. So in-depth inquiry is at the top. The next thing here says driving question. A driving question, this is a rubric that you can print out to have your students help come up with a driving question. But basically the components of your question, you ask how can we or how can I, and then build, create, make, these are just some verbs that you can use, or, and then you fill in your public audience. This is available on Buck Institute's website. But an example would be, this is an example of a driving question that we're working on right now. How can we turn a school bus into a mobile, interactive, cultural experience for elementary students that is fun and educational? That's a big, big challenge that we have. And so it takes a lot to, there's a lot of different components, which is why it is such a large project. But your driving question is exactly what it sounds like. It should drive all of your work. So whenever you're working on, you have to ask yourself, is that going, like, is this some side road that we've just taken, or is this helping us accomplish what our goal actually is? Because your driving questions should drive the work that is in the project that you're doing. So the next thing on the chart there under driving question says need to know. So need to know, the key is to get the students thinking about the skills that they're going to need to know in order to be able to accomplish the project. It is harder than it sounds. The first time I did it, I thought it sounded, or maybe I just thought it sounded easy. I thought, well, this will be pretty easy. We're gonna do our entry event. We're gonna talk about what our project's gonna be. Then I'm gonna ask the kids, what do you need from me? What do you need to know from me? What do I need to teach you to be able to accomplish this? And I thought they were gonna be able to tell me. And it was very, very difficult. It was very difficult because they didn't know what they needed to know. So it does take some guiding. It does take some practice. But they were able to, a tool that I use a lot is Padlet. Does anybody familiar with Padlet? You guys see a few nodding heads. It used to be called Wallwisher. It's now called Padlet. I'm going to show you an example. So this was a project that some 8th graders were working on last year, and I posted what they were supposed to be doing at the top. What would it be helpful to know about culture and history for the project that we were about to work on? And I said, use this space to brainstorm ideas. And so they started throwing up pictures. They threw up sticky notes. You can tell it was different people. You can see different people's names on here, Seth and Adriana and Emma. And so, for example, she said, how many times have people failed and then tried again? How do people in history bounce back? So they're kind of identifying right there some research questions that they're going to have to go and find. So some things are things they're going to find the answers to. Some things they tell me that, I don't know how to write a business letter, so if I'm going to have to write a business letter in this project, I need to know how to do it. And so there's kind of the two different sides that they need to know. What are they going to have to go and find out, and what am I going to need to teach them? That's really great because then when we're learning, I just finished a project with my 6th graders, and we were writing a business letter, style letter, because they were inviting their heroes to come and watch their hero presentations, and we wrote it in a business style, so they had some experience with it. And it was great when we were doing it, and a couple of them started to say, I don't get why we're doing this. I don't know why we have to do this. And I said, because on our need to know, you said you didn't know how to write a business letter, so if you don't know how to write a business letter, then I have to teach you, right? They're like, oh yeah, we did say that. We don't need to know it, so I guess we do need to know how to do it. So it helps a little bit in that area too when you're teaching something that your students have identified for you as something they need to know how to do. If you get a little bit of pushback, it helps to be able to have that to come back with. Voice and choice is a huge element of project-based learning. The key is students as stakeholders. This group right here is an excellent example. You're going to hear a lot about the voice and the choice that they've had. They even helped create this class, which Travis is going to talk about, so I'm not going to. But the more voice and the more choice that the students can have, the bigger of a stakeholder they are, and the more bought in they are into the project, the more obviously effort and the more drive that they're going to have. This can come in different forms. Sometimes with my 6th graders and my 8th graders, I've used Google surveys as a way to get their input, just to see different things. For example, this was the project that you saw the entry event for. We called that project The Real World. And so in the Real World project, one of the things they had to do was read a novel, because it was a language arts class. So they were reading the novel to gain some empathy for different people. And so they had some choices down there. I gave them like 18 different choices of novels, and they went through on their Google survey and said, well, these would be my top picks. We talked a little bit about what each book was about. That was just a simple, easy way to give them a little bit of choice, because I didn't assign them a book to read, but they didn't just have a choice of a couple. They had 18 different choices they could pick from. So they really liked that they had a ton of choice. They had topics. So we went around and did a brainstorming session one day, and so I took the things that came up over and over and over again, like people said they were interested in working on homelessness, interested in working on hunger, on child labor, on child soldiers, the ones that came up a bunch of times. I put those on the Google Doc and then just listed one at the bottom that said other. I actually kind of sneakily got them into groups that way, because I didn't tell them why they were choosing. I just said, if you had to pick today, and you're going to choose the one thing, that this is one thing I really want to learn about, one thing that I really want to do something about, I'd like to make a difference in, choose what that thing would be. And they chose, and it just kind of worked out where it was sort of evenly distributed. And so then they just met the next day in that group, and I said, this is not your group. You're not married to these people. You're not stuck with them. But just if you were going to work with these people and you were going to do this project on homelessness, what kind of ideas would you have that you could share with each other? And so once they started throwing out ideas with each other, they kind of liked the group that they were in. They liked the input that they were getting from each other. I did have 1 or 2 people that I had to move because they weren't kind of clicking with their group. But they kind of, put themselves into groups, because groups is always a hard thing. I don't know if it is for you guys. It's always a tough thing. You got to figure out what kids to put in what group. You got to think about personality. You got to think about ability level, and you have all these different things to think about. Well, for this particular project, this worked because they were all passionate about the topic that they chose. Revision and reflection is an important part of the process, and it's making students think through what they were doing while they're doing it, as well as after they do it. I know a lot of us probably have our kids reflect after they've done something, and we think back about what we could have done better, what we could change, what we could do differently. But one thing I learned is going through this process that's also really important is having them reflect throughout the process also, and not just waiting until the very end, but having them reflect throughout. So that can be done through journals. It can be done through just class share-outs. One tool that I've used quite a bit to do it is, again, Google surveys and Google Docs. Whenever we go out and do a lot of different activities and a lot of different presentations with our Unlock class. The day that we come back, the very first thing we always do is we start a shared Google Doc with each other, and we throw stuff up. We say, that sounded bad. We put stuff up on the Google Doc, and we put stuff up there like, these are the things that we know we did really well. We communicated these things really well. We did these things really well. And then the very next thing that we do is we spend a lot of time saying, these are the things that we need to get better at. We did not do a good job when we talked about this, or we did not do a good job being prepared to lead this particular activity. And we're critical on ourselves. We do it every single time, and it helps a lot, because then the next time we have that document that we can go back to, and we've all contributed to it. It wasn't something I made. And we're going to show you Google Docs in a second if you're not familiar with it. But it's a document we all contributed to that we can constantly go back to and say, these were the areas that we needed to improve in. Get through that real quick. Public audience. Public audience kind of scares some people. It doesn't have to be a huge public audience. I'm going to give you some different examples. But the key is that it proves to the students that the work they're doing is important, that it matters, that the teacher is not the only person who's going to see it, because they don't care that much really about what we think when they do, but they want to know that there's some greater, bigger meaning. If I'm going to put my heart and soul, if I'm really going to give you my best effort, then I'm going to give you better effort if I know that there's some real meaning that it's going to. So my 6th graders, for example, they just finished their hero project last week. Their public audience was they wrote a business letter to all of their heroes, which they had done the project on, and we had the projects displayed in the public library, and they wrote the letter and invited all of their heroes in. We had a huge turnout. We had so many people that it was actually difficult to kind of move throughout the library. It was really great because people stopped and not only looked at the projects that kind of focused on them or were their own child's, but people did an awesome job of going around and looking at other people's projects too, and the kids were standing beside their project to kind of talk more about it. People were awesome. They stopped and asked them questions, so the kids got great practice of having to think on the spot to be able to answer a question. That's one example of a public audience. But it can also be something smaller. For a project, for the 8th grade project that you saw the entry event for, their public audience was a panel of 3 people. And so they presented, when they did their presentations, it was in their classmates were in the class, but then there was a panel of 3 people in front of them. But I chose those 3 people really carefully. So I chose a college professor of communications, and he actually donated his time and came in and listened to the students' presentation. I had a freelance writer who came in and was one of the judges, and then I had one of our administrators, our assistant principal. So even though their public audience was only 3 people, it was 3 really important people that they didn't want to look silly in front of, that they really wanted to work hard so that they could impress them. It was really great because the professor, after we finished, he said, you know what, one of the things we focused on was our presentation skills in that project. He said, these guys are awesome presenters. He said, they're in 8th grade. He said, I wish my freshmen in college would present like these guys just presented. Which we were like, yes. So that was something that we worked really, really hard on. But then I asked him to come back in. I said, well, will you come back in and tell the kids that? Because it'll mean more coming from you than it will me relaying it from you to them. He's like, sure. So he went back in, told them that they were amazing presenters, that he had freshmen in college who weren't as good as them. I mean, you could just see their faces were lighting up. They were getting excited. They talked about that for a long time after that the college professor had given them those comments. But no matter what format it takes, it's the fact that the kids know that it's not just for grade, that there is something greater, there is something bigger, there is more meaning than just my teacher's going to read it and assign me a grade for it. And just, presentation tools, Keynote, Prezi, those are some that my kids use a lot. Community partners, this is something that this year has been very exciting for me because I didn't do a lot with community partners before this year, and I went to some PBL training over the summer that convicted me that I needed to do more of getting out and inviting in community partners, involving experts and community members every chance you get. Here's why it's been so exciting. I have yet to go out and ask somebody to partner with us when this hasn't happened. So when I went to the library and asked the librarian, would she partner with this project, and I gave her an overview of this hero project that we want to do. By the time we were about a week into it, a week planning, she and I met once or twice to plan it out. She's sending me emails saying, thank you for letting me be a part of this project. And I'm thinking, like, she's doing us a favor by letting us come and, take up the library and invite all these people in. And she's writing me saying, thank you for partnering with us. And it's happened again and again and again, that every partner that we've gone out and said, will you partner with us on this project? Not only do they come in, not every partner, there's always a few that just say, I can't do it, I can't commit to that. But to the partners that have said yes, every one of them has ended up thanking us for letting them be a part of it, and we're just grateful, that they've come in to partner with us. So community members and inviting in experts from your community is an awesome and a great key to project-based learning. For teacher management, managing all these different components, because it's a lot of different stuff. You have a lot of different stuff happening all at the same time. And one thing about project-based learning, when you walk into a PBL classroom, it might look like chaos, but it's sort of organized chaos, because there might be 5 kids over in one corner of the room who are working on one thing. There might be a kid over by themselves in a different part of the room working on something completely different. There might be a group in the back that's, again, working on something completely different. So that's a lot of stuff happening all at once. So for me, I use a learning management system, which I don't know how many of your schools have learning management systems. There's free ones like Edmodo,
Haiku is actually free.
Haiku is free for one class. We have Haiku as a district. If you purchase it as a district, there's a price. But if you're just doing it for one class, then Haiku is free for one class. There really are a plethora of learning management systems out there, and a lot of them are free. What it does is it just allows you to keep track of all those different things that you have going on in an electronic way, so that you can go through and you can see the work that your kids are doing at any given time, and your kids don't have to be in front of you to do it, because you have all of it organized in your learning management system. Benchmarks is something that I worked on throughout the summer because I went to the training that I mentioned and I said, look, I get my kids really excited in the entry event. I have no problem getting them pumped up at the beginning of the project. I really have no problem at the end when they finally wrap everything up of getting them to have a great product at the end. My problem is in the middle. Because if our project is 4 weeks long and they think they have all the time in the world and every day come in and it's like, I feel like they're wasting time. At the very end, work really, really, really hard and get really, really stressed out, but pull it all together at the end. And so I really worked on what can I do to kind of prevent some of that. And one of the answers was benchmarks, of having benchmarks that the students have to meet before they can move on to something different. They have to meet benchmarks. So this is an example from this class, from a book that we're reading, which Joseph's going to tell you a little bit about in a minute. But one of our first benchmark for that book was, I can demonstrate how a person's point of view can affect their perspective of the world around them. And so already having that rubric laid out and having the benchmarks laid out with my sixth graders, I give them at the beginning of the project, I even do this with my sixth graders, I'll give them every benchmark for the entire project. So they can see up front, these are the 20 things, or however many there are. These are the 20 things that you're going to have to accomplish in this project. It's overwhelming at first, especially for my sixth graders. They're like, how am I going to get all this done? This is really stressful. But that's how I'm able to keep them focused on the work every day when you come in. You know, we take a look at where are you in your benchmarks. You've only completed 2 benchmarks. The rest of your class has completed 4. You're really getting behind. So you have to work on this. If it means you have to work at home, then you've got to work at home. So that's just kind of one thing to keep them in that in-between time, to keep them working and moving, is having the benchmarks. There are so many resources, it's hard to mention, at Buck Institute for education. So if you've never visited that site, that is definitely an amazing site to take back to your schools, Buck Institute for Education. They have different pages on there where you can go, you can download whole complete projects from any grade level, from any subject area that PBL teachers have already put together. And so they have rubrics. If you want a rubric for project-based learning, this is the place to get them. They have amazing rubrics that are aligned with the Common Core standards, so you don't have to go out and make your own. They're already there, and they're great, and they work well because I've used them. So they're not just, for show, like they're great. They have free, what I started with when I started learning about project-based learning was something called pblu.org. They offer free, this is done through Buck Institute. They offer free online courses, and so they kind of take all those components on the chart that we've been talking about, like the entry event, the driving question, and they break those apart. When I did it, they were doing 2-week classes. I think they've changed it to now they're doing 1-week classes. But so they might take a 1-week class and focus only on the driving question. And that's all you learn about. You learn all the ins, all the outs, how to make one, why it's important, everything that you can learn about a driving question. And you have a real instructor who gives you real feedback, and it's a Buck Institute certified PBL certified teacher. So that is a great place if you're looking, if teachers at your school are looking for places to start. That's a great place to start. A way to start simple is even if you don't do the classes and you have somebody who is willing to be brave and just try a project-based learning project. If you look at, there are a lot of projects on here, but I say this is starting simple because the projects on pbl.org/projects, there's not as many to choose from, but they are extremely detailed. We're talking when you download this project, it might be 20 pages long because it's everything thought through for you. Not that you don't have to do work, but it's that a certified PBL teacher has gone through and thought about entry events and given you choices. It's not like this is the entry event you have to do, but they've gone through and they said, well, these are some great entry events that would work really well for this project, and this is why. And then this is an example of a driving question that you could use for this project. So like all the elements that are really necessary, they've gone through and already kind of outlined those for you. So that is a way, if somebody's brave enough to start a project and they don't know a lot about it, that's a way to kind of feel secure that you know you have all those important elements in there. And then there is something called PBL Academy, and we are hopefully going to bring this to our school in Eminence this summer. But they offer this is the training that I went through over the summer, and Ms. Treese went with me. It's a week-long training that they offer on PBL. It's amazing. It's phenomenal. It's probably the best training that I've ever been to since I've been a teacher. It was $20 a day, So you can't beat that price for anything, and it was incredible, incredible training. And if we aren't able to offer it, we're definitely going to take a group of our teachers to them. We did have to drive from Eminence. It was about an hour and a half that we drove into Indiana, but we're hoping to bring it to Eminence so that people in the Ovec region can come to us and not have to travel so far. So I was putting a little plug for that, and just keep your ears open for more information coming up about that. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my students. And I apologize that I'm going to switch over to computers here because presentation is different.
And I do hope, what our intent is to really give you some insight on PBL. PBL is thrown around a lot, and there's a lot of questions around what is true PBL. And what we wanted you to see is that, especially for people that are designing schedules, and trying to figure out how do you make time for these kind of courses to happen, because it does have to go into an untypical schedule. And I can tell you that our guidance counselor is in the room, and I've probably stressed her out over some things with scheduling, because we do have to have a different schedule, and it is a little bit weird to make time for these things to really transpire. Mrs. Montgomery has done a wonderful job of doing using PBL in her traditional classroom setting. But our desire is to really move forward with project-based learning and be able to integrate more content areas, therefore needing more time to really get to much higher rigor levels and to be able to cover the amount of standards that we want to cover in those classes. But what I hope you go away with here today is at least a little greater understanding about PBL and the components, the required components that it is based on standards, because we are a lot of people that will say, where are the standards? And we did spend an enormous amount of time working on standards with PBL. But then even beyond that, I hope that you'll see the work of PBL and some of the results from the student perspective. And then at the end, I'm going to share a little bit with you administratively what that took to really build it into the schedule, what it took in terms of integrating the credits and some of the policies that we had to create through SBDM. To really honor those credits and make sure that we have things covered on our end for our students, for those things to be added onto their transcripts. It looks like the Unlock group is ready, and so I'm going to turn it over to the students.
Good morning. This morning when we came in, we're very tired. So we decided we'd like to do something to wake us up. So we decided on doing icebreakers. I'd like to do one with you all. The only instructions are do not look at anybody else's paper and do things as you hear. Like, don't ask questions. First thing we need to do is close the paper and pass. Now rip off the top right corner. Now fold it in half again. Turn it 3 times to the right. And tear off the top left corner. And fold it 1 more time. Tear off the bottom right corner.
Good thing I worked out last night.
Okay, you try your very hardest to cut out a little circle in the middle. Here, sorry. There, sorry.
You guys have your camera?
Now if everyone would please open your papers and hold them up.
The Halloween up here.
One of those icebreakers was so good.
Well, like, teacher, family.
directions differently. So we need to communicate very specifically when we are talking with someone, like our partner in Nicaragua. We need to communicate with them very specifically, or else something that we're communicating with them won't end up being done the way we need it to.
Alright, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our story. Basically, we started off last year. A group of students came together and we're like, we're tired of the traditional classroom. We don't like how we're just cramming for a test and not really remembering the stuff afterwards. So we went to Ms. Treese and talked to her about it, and she said, we can do that. And she found an organization that we could partner with, and we were actually able to make an impact. We came together so that we can make a difference in the community and not just do standard classroom work where all it does is benefit you for short term. Whenever she teamed us up with that organization, it was good because it kick-started our thinking. We had several different projects within that, one of which included implementing education into orphans overseas. We had to think of all the different challenges about how you had to use the different technology that we had here, and we were curious whether they could actually have access over there. So we had to think of different ways that we could actually get our knowledge over there to help them, because in order to do that, you have to be able to educate the people and not just supply them with resources. Throughout that process, it really kick-started our design thinking. This was because that we had to think of what we needed to know, like she mentioned, what we already knew about what they had. This was including their resources, their climate, their education already, what their primary school was, like their high school here. Then we needed to learn about how they needed to grow, not just implement the American idea. Because if we went over there and did that, then that would fail, because they don't need the American idea. They need what's best for them. So it was really hard at first to be able to wrap our mind around the aspect of, well, we don't need to give them what's here, we need to be able to give them what they need. So we had to think more like them. Throughout the course of that year, we grew quite a bit in our learning. And then the end of the year got cut short because school ended. So, so we went on summer break, and we had a team of presenters go in front of, what was it, like 500? Yeah. It was like 500 people there. And they did really well. It started getting people thinking about our project, realizing that you can actually make a difference. After that, we came back to school. Start of August, everybody was bright about the ideas, thinking about, we can actually do this. And then we thought about, well, we need what's best for our class, and we need something that actually ties with an organization, not molding our class to the organization. So the organization there was great and everything, but it didn't fit directly to us. So we had to find someone new. This included us creating a business plan. So we had to make a list of what we had to offer, all the different things that we are and what our class makes up. So we went in front of Go International, which is a missions organization, and presented in front of them. It was their president and their ex-president. Yeah. And that went pretty well because we came out with a partner. They then had a place that they had thought that would be best for us because they didn't want a larger community because we're a small class. So we needed to start with a small community, either building up the trees or something to that effect, so that it wasn't necessarily bolting the whole community, but a smaller one, which really fit us because we're a small school. So they partnered us with a group over in Nicaragua and a man named Carlos, which we're actually sending people this fall so that we can go do recon to figure out what they need so that we can take our ideas and our young entrepreneur-like mindset to where we could take what they have and make it better, or take what they have and mold to what they need. So that's some things that we have planned for in the future so that we can send a group next spring so that they can go and actually do it after we've already thought about what we have.
Why we do this? Maybe a lot of people have a question why we do this. We have a reason why we do this, because we want to help those kids they don't have a family, they don't have mom and dad, they never been at school. We want to help them to go to school, or we can show them the way to reach their dream. We can show them to be a doctor, they can be the professor, they can be whatever they want, but they don't have the key. We want to be the key. We want to give them hope. We want to give them love. We want to give them faith. They don't know. We want to tell them they're great. They never heard what does great mean. We want to show them they are great. We want to show them they can do whatever they want. We can be their key, and then we can open their dream, and then they can go and they can reach their dream. Now we were here because we want to help them. We're not gonna go there and build the village. We can't. But we just give them hope. That's a big deal. One person can love by one person. That's a big deal for them. We want to do something big thing because we can't. We can't give them love. We can't give them hope. We can't give them faith. We're gonna do that whole thing, and that's why we're here. We're gonna help them. We're gonna open their dream. That's what.
Ms. Montgomery hit what project-based learning means on the head, but I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk about what it means to me, and it means something different to all of my classmates. But it means that we don't come into a class and get our notebooks out and take notes like every school does, and get those old history books out that maybe even our parents have used. And it means that we do like projects that is based on what we need to learn. We don't. We do go off the schedule, but it's off of our schedule, like what we need to do next. And we made that up. That's why we're a student-led class. And now I'm going to ask some of my classmates what project-based learning means to them. Jared.
Project-based learning means to me that we control what we want to learn. Like, the teacher's there for us and all, but we control what we want to learn, and we log our own standards, and we actually make a difference in the world.
Travis, what is project-based learning?
Basically, whenever we come together, we are student-led, like you said. It allows us to actually be self-motivated so that we don't need a teacher telling us, do this or you're going to get a 0 and fail this class. And it allows us to know that we're actually making a difference and not just sitting in class doing standard work.
That's what project-based learning means to our class.
I'm going to tell you now about how we blend education with law. One of the ways is through a Socratic seminar or a Socratic circle. And what that is once a week our class gets together in a discussion about a book we're reading. We just now finished reading the Poisonwood Bible, and we have one more Socratic seminar to do about it. And I'm just going to tell you about the book real quick so you know why we're reading it. The Poisonwood Bible is about a Baptist family that goes to Africa, to a place called the Congo. They go here because they think that they need the American way, because they think America is doing better off than the Congo. They go here and they find out that they can't do the American way. It doesn't work out in other countries, only America. You have to do the African way in Africa. So they don't succeed with their plan, and that's showing us that we can't go to Nicaragua or any other place in the world trying to change them. We have to go there trying to help them, and we have to try and understand what they need. We have a quick video to show you what it looks like in our class.
That she's not so awesome or something. We're going to do the two. Or else she tried to get in the note and stuff, and because she was later.
Also with Nathan,
On page 197, it talks about how he went to war, and that's like he used to be a really like great person, and that changed him.
Yeah, I think some of the reasons that it changed him is because whenever he was going through the different battles and started coming back, he probably witnessed a bunch of death. And him being in this place where he's at now, it's starting to make him feel like he's either reliving it or trying to help the people that he couldn't help before.
One thing she's not as, she's not a little kid anymore. She's gone through some experiences that kind of changed her.
Okay, so something I wanted to add about like when Kevin went to the Philippines for the war. There's actually a part there that I remember visiting, and it was actually like a jail that they had put like the soldiers in, and it was just really neat. Like they were talking about it, so like, oh, I've been there, I've lived there, I know it. Just wanted to say it.
So that you understand what's happening. There's some tables on the outside, and there's a table on the inside. And that's why it's called a circle. We call the tables on the outside circle, the table on the inside circle. Everyone you heard talking was on the inside circle. And so the people on the outside circle all have a partner with someone on the inside. They're sitting behind them. They're taking notes over what they hear, and so that when they switch positions, they can get their mind out over like what we read, what they heard. And then you saw Mary Tess walk over to a seat from the outside circle to the inner circle. And what that is, we call it the hot seat. That's if someone in the outside circle wants to talk about something, they walk over to the hot seat, one person at a time, and they talk and get out their thoughts about what they just heard from their classmates.
So I'm going to be talking about what makes our classroom different from any other classroom in the world. I mean, because we're different because we do project-based learning, so that's different. And so here is an example of what our classroom looks like. That is the chart papers on our walls, and for the chart papers, we write down when we're doing the Socratic circle, we write down what we like, our ideas and what we found out about the book and how it can help us with what our project that we're doing. And then we also have the whiteboard wall. This is paint that's actually on the wall. And so on this wall, we write down our ideas and what we need to accomplish for that day or that week, and like how long, like when we need to get that accomplished by. And then we also have different types of seating in our classroom. There's 3 different types. One is in the back of the classroom in this picture. You can see that there's big rectangle tables, and those are when we do larger group discussions and when we all want to talk to each other. And then we have individual desks over on this side, and that is when you want to work by yourself and get things done. And then we have small circle tables, and those are for small group discussions. And this is how our classroom is different from any other classroom.
As Ms. Montgomery has briefly mentioned, we have been given a bus by our Board of Education that is no longer used for student transportation. They wanted us to do something different and creative with it. So after lots of brainstorming and deciding what we were going to do, we decided to create an interactive cultural learning experience for elementary students. With that, the first step is to go in and to strip out the insides of the bus and to remodel it. The end goal is to take it around to elementary schools in our area and as a fundraiser for the mission work that we're going to be doing in Nicaragua, and there are plans and goals there. On that, we would have our stations and an experience of culture around the world and the different components of that culture for the students. Here are some examples of stations. One is sports, and soccer is very, very popular in other countries, especially in Southern America. And so we have a homemade soccer ball that an impoverished child would make. because can't afford to get their own, so that's what they would do. That's one of the stations we would make with them. Another, music and dance is a big part of culture, and so we would do homemade instruments. And language, we have Frozen, since Let It Go is very popular right now. We are using it to show 25 different languages to the students and that are spoken around the world. Today, we want to let you all experience one of the stations because we also are doing games that children in other countries do. When Travis and I were in Haiti this summer at Vacation Bible School, they did a game called TikTok, and so we are going to actually let you all play that today. So these tables over here, if you all want to be a group, and then you want to just do all of this over here, be a group, and then you stand and 2 groups here. Okay. You want to do front and back or half and half? I think front and back will probably be easier. Okay, so the front 3 tables and the back 2, because I think there's more people in the back are a group, so we'll have 3 groups because we have 3 different balls. Travis is going to be our TikTok timer. You're going to pass the ball around, so since you're in line, you just pass it down, and then when it gets to the end, just pass it back. Does that make sense? And then he's going to say tick-tock, tick-tock, and whenever he feels the need to say boom, whoever is holding the ball would be out, and so you all can just take a seat where you are. Okay? Yeah,
You want to be in?
Okay, so here's your roll.
And then this side. So you'll pass it. Yeah. Are we ready? Okay, Travis. Y'all are gonna start passing it. Travis is gonna start being our TikTok timer.
Tick tock, 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 boom! Tick tock, tick tock, boom!
Am I going to be the last? So you're done. There we go.
You wanted it.
Yeah. But I'm competitive, so it's hard to pick. That's a simple word.
It was a bridge, man.
Tick tock, 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 boom! Tick tock, 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 boom! Tick tock. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, boom!
Did you win? Where's this?
A fun fact is these are actually the soccer balls that we're going to be making with the students that are, a couple of our boys that wrapped in duct tape. So, the purpose of our bus and our stations is the most important is fun. We want to be able to teach the kids and let them have an enjoyable learning experience, but make it very fun and interactive for them. And then the other part is for us, like we have to do a lot of planning and organizing through it. How we're going to do it, starting with stripping out the buses, which you saw before, and all the work we have to put into that. So that is our purpose, and that is our goal and plans for the bus. Thank you.
Since technology is really big in our school, because every student has a MacBook, we decided that one of the best ways to use technology for our group is to make a website. And that's exactly what we did. And we just decided to make it where on our homepage we have our mission statement, because that's what we want people to see first, to know what we're doing. And then we have a short About Us tab, which is pretty much just what Travis explained earlier. Then it seems about every month we're getting invited to another convention or somewhere to do a presentation, so we always have an upcoming events tab. And that also details our trip we're taking and then our bus. And we have a blog that we do, and it just details like any presentations you do or what's happened lately. And we always try to keep it updated as much as possible, but sometimes we have something more bigger that we need to get done. And another thing we like to use is Google Docs, because that's a good way for all of us to be able to collaborate with each other and put our ideas and details down on somewhere where we can always change them. And our business plan that we mentioned, we made on Google Docs. We put our ideas down, and then we change it from there and we edited it. And one way we'd like to show you how we use Google Docs is through this link. And if anybody has a computer, they're free to use it and try it. Then the link is bit.ly/, I think, ESI and law. It's right there.
So you'd like them to go there to have
Yeah.
a computer?
And another way, since we always want to be able, make sure we're on the forefront of informing people, we have a Twitter that we've been using. And another way we want to use technology on our bus is we have the thing called a Ricoh data camera, which you've seen Mr. Piercy use all throughout the day. And this pretty much takes a 360-degree photograph. And there's just like a virtual reality helmet. It's just cardboard. That's like a $10 kit. And you can put your phone in it, and you can turn your head whichever way. And that's pretty much how you look at the 360-degree photo. Yeah.
Hold it above your head, and so it's synced to your phone. So you press a button, and it just took a photo of the entire room.
So we're gonna try to pass it.
Yeah, yeah.
Never stops.
Then, like Mr. Comey said, we'll pass that around. And see, this is kind of what we do. We always have, like, we even had a Google Doc for this presentation and what we wanted to go across the line. And, like, just like you can see, we all put our ideas down and then we go from there. And then you can see right here how many people are on. And we have school accounts, so we can always tell who's writing what and who has a good input.
Just a little bit about Weebly. It's an online website that the students in the classroom use for standard-based grading. On this website, we are able to put our English and our technology standards on it so that our teachers can see. Then we are able to put evidence to why or how we met the standard. And then at the bottom of the page, and Caitlin will show you a little bit about that, we are able to talk about why we felt like we met that standard.
So initially, the Weebly allows us to show our understanding of one or multiple standards at a time. So right here, display gives us the topic in the left-hand corner, which says receive and reflect, and the date of the post as September 9th. Also under archives, you can find already recorded posts under any particular month. Next would be the background summary. That's right up here. That you just state real quick about what we're doing, how, when, where, why. In Unlock, the classroom is different than that of a formal one. As a student, I have a voice in deciding the outcome of the class setting and environment, while incorporating state standards and school requirements. One of the ways I do so is by having a student-led class discussions called a Socratic seminar, which we talked about earlier in the presentation, and which, based on individual participation after each discussion, I reflect on the day's events and its relation to future ones. After this, you would just state your standards that was being met during this discussion. And it would be write routinely over extended time frames, time for research, reflection, and revision, and shorter time frames as a single sitting, 1 or 2 days, for a range of tasks, purposes, and audiences. And then right after that, we would just post our evidence of that standards, and the evidence that the Weebly provides right now is the worksheet that we do every time we do a Socratic seminar. So this one's based on the first one that we did on Book 1, Genesis, and the Poisonous Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. And we would just do an individual reflection after it of the inner and outer discussions. And on the second page, we would just rate ourselves from 1 to 5, 1 being the least able to participate in the discussion, and 5 being the highest. And then we just tally mark our partners' participation within the discussion. And then finally, we would take notes on our thoughts and share our strongest one with the class.
One of the very first steps in our project was basically just getting our name out there and making sure people heard about what we were doing. Our first conference this summer was ISLN, and we went there to explain our project-based learning and how our classroom is different from everyone else's. Our second conference it wasn't really a conference, it was more like a partnership meeting. It was our Go International partnership meeting, as I said. But it was to help us find a partner that, like Travis said earlier, fit us, not us fitting with them. And then we are here today as explaining how our PBL. Last week we had a board meeting to get our bus plan accepted so that we could continue with that part of our class. In March we're going to be going to a KISTI conference to explain how technology is a major part in our class.
As you all have already heard multiple times, we went to Go International a few weeks ago and we presented them about what our plans were and asked if they would partner with us, and they said sure. And now we're in the process of working on a Nicaragua trip to where we're going to have some of our classmates go in the spring. This is our our mission statement, and I want to point out a few elements of it. Student-led, and I know you all have heard of this, but we are truly a student-led class to where, like, they just said we log our own standards, and even though the teacher does tell us what standards we're using, we still log our own standards and we still have to prove what we're doing. and the teacher helps us along, but we decide what we need to do. And these are what we call the 3 E's. And educate, we want to go over there and hopefully get a partnership with them and help educate their children in whatever subject they need help in. We want to empower and equip them, and we feel like if we do these 3, then we will help them become the next generation leaders in their country. The next is duplicatable. After we get done in Nicaragua doing whatever project we need to do, we want to be able to go to a different country or wherever we feel led to go and be able to help them just as much as we help the Nicaraguans. And lastly, we want to make them self-sustaining. So say we go to school and it blows down in a storm, we don't want them to have to call us and ask them to come build it again. We want to teach them how to do this stuff. We want to educate them, not only schoolwork, but like just educate them in life. And lastly, this is a map of Nicaragua, and this is Carlos Mayorga, who is our standing partner in Nicaragua, and that's a picture of him. And he actually lives in Chinandega, which is over here on the west coast of Nicaragua, and we'll be working in Punaloya, which is also right beside Chinandega on the west coast of Nicaragua. And we hope you all enjoyed our presentation and learned a lot.
Okay, our presentation's not over yet. We enjoyed it up to this point. Okay. Well, everybody knows how a lock works. Everybody knows how a lock works. It needs a key, and of course the lock to be a lock. And it might already be open, but if you don't have a key and it gets locked, you can't do anything with it. So we want to have this represent the people and the communities and the children that we would be helping in Nicaragua and around the world. And we want to be represented by the key. And we want to use this key to open new opportunities or unlock them. And we want to unlock opportunities that they wouldn't have because they don't have people pushing them or loving and giving them hope that they can do whatever they want. Like Faven said, they can be a professor or a doctor. They might just not know it yet because they don't have anybody to teach them or to empower them or equip them like we would be doing with our mission statement.
All right, so you probably will be able to tell, but I am super proud of these students. And I'm super proud of them on many, many levels, but this isn't easy. You guys are getting to hear the highlights, and it has taken a lot of work to get to this point. And so I'm going to ask them to share a few of the things, just in all fairness of transparency. I want them to share some of the things that we've had to overcome. Because I mean, even as of yesterday when I spoke to Ms. Montgomery, there are some days that I walk in and she's like, it was great. It was so awesome, Ms. Treese, you're just not going to believe all these things that we did. And here's their little schedule that they came up with on what they're going to do. And there are some days that she'll look at me and go, I don't know what happened. And I can see it in their faces as well. I can typically, if I'm not able to get up to the room in the morning, I can typically, when I see them, almost be able to predict the kind of reaction that I'm going to get from Ms. Montgomery. And part of that is us letting go. In order for project-based learning to happen, one of the core components that I really had to get a handle on, right? Because, I mean, those of us that are in administrative roles, we like to control and make sure that what's happening is supposed to happen and that it's going really smooth, because if we hit a bump, then everybody in the region knows about it, and then what are we going to do? Because we've got to overcome this problem. What I have come to realize is that if we don't run into barriers, if we don't have problems to solve, then I'm absolutely not providing these students with the education that they need. Because I have run into bumps in my life, and so have you. And we've had to learn, a lot of us have had to learn the hard way how to overcome them. And so my realization, I really think it probably happened during that week that I was in PBL this summer, was I am really doing an injustice to students, pretending that they can walk in my building every day and walk in a neat little classroom, and we can pour in the information on nice and neat, and then they're gonna regurgitate it later when they need it, and then there's really no application when they leave. I was very convicted by some of the students that are sitting here and doing this presentation. In that, they did come to me. We had a great discussion, multiple afternoons, right? Discussions are super fun with high school kids because you just go everywhere with them, and especially when they're after school. And we were just having a real blunt conversation. Emily was in on that conversation. And they were saying some things that were really hard for me to hear as an administrator, right? We're a district of innovation, and we're doing all of these awesome things, and we're giving MacBooks out to students. I mean, it's like Christmas every day at Eminence, right? Well, you can give a lot of tools, but you still have to have something to motivate them. The tool in and of itself, it was motivating for probably 6 weeks. And then the new toyness wore off. And we had to really figure out what we're going to use those tools for. And I sat with some students after school that day, and they really had some conversation around, we know it's bigger than this. We really know it's bigger than this, but we really want to be in it. We really want to be doing it. We want to be the people that are out there that are in the trenches, that are making the differences. And so, go wrap your head around that for a few minutes when a student is telling you that what they're getting in school really isn't what they need. And we've offered early college, and that's a great fit for some students. But we also had students that were back in the school that wanted to be pushed and that wanted to do something that was meaningful. And so we got into that conversation. And honestly, they can tell you, I said, well, we'll talk about it a little more, right? That's the standard answer. Great, I'm so excited that you're excited about this, and we'll figure out a way to do it. Knowing that I had really no idea how it was going to look. And as time went on, they bring it up again, and we ended up in another conversation after school. And at one point, the students said, can we just go ahead and get started on it? We really want to put this together. We had a partner that was willing, but the full intention was not to really do this class or start it until the fall. I had a student approach me in the office one day with a list, and they had gotten a hold of the master schedule, and they all looked at their classes and said, you know what, if you switch me out of this class and move me here and this one, then all 20 of us can be in the same place at the same time, and we can have our class. Sweet, right? Project-based learning, I guess, in and of itself. And so what I told them was, well, the problem is we don't have a teacher. Gosh, I would love to do that, and I'm really excited that you did all of this work and that you've got it figured out. I was like, I don't have a body. We're always short bodies, and I'm like, I really don't have an extra body, and this is the last 9 weeks of school that we're coming up on. And so long story short, Ms. Treese ends up, I won't say teaching the class because I'm not going to take credit for teaching anything, but what we did is we really started the process of figuring out what it needed to look like and building some of those components in. Ms. Montgomery came in, led them through the vision statement one day when I was at a meeting, and it was glorious because honestly I didn't know anything about PBL. I was trying to use PBL, so I was trying to do homework, come in the next day and deliver it the best that I could, and it really didn't work. And I realized why it didn't work now that I went after I had gone to the training through the summer. But it was very motivating. It was very motivating for me to see and to be able to interact with the students on their level in terms of what they needed. And that really became the impetus for me to know that I had to do something different. That it wasn't good enough just to give them the tool. It wasn't good enough to do the same things in the traditional classroom that we had always done and expect something different to come out of it. What it really took was the rubber meeting the road and us really listening to our student voice. And it was hard. It was hard at times because we want to think that everything that we're doing is great and everybody's in a happy place. But kudos to some of them for being very brave and saying, we do want something different. Now, I will tell you on the flip side of that, when we started this year, I think some of them would tell you that this has been hard. Because a traditional classroom is much easier to walk in and sit down and take your notes and take your assessment and turn it in. And so I'm going to ask them to share a little bit about some of the barriers that you've had to overcome in the classroom. Does anybody want to volunteer? Yeah, it is referred to as the dark day. Yes, Cameron. You can share about the dark day.
We have this day that we all call the dark day because we were talking about embedding like classes and stuff in this project, and we were all really stressed about it because us sophomores have to take an end of the course and all that, and we were like, there's no way we'll be prepared for it. And we're sitting in there talking, Miss Treese has got this class set up, we're in there, and she was like, so you are saying that y'all just want to quit this class and all that? And we're sitting there, it has to be 2 minutes of silence. And we're sitting in this room, everybody just looking at each other, all stressed. And finally we came to the conclusion that we didn't want to quit it because then we'd have to be going back to our regular English class and all that. So that was the dark day, and we still all refer to it as the dark day to this day. And we never want to go back to that day.
It was a dark day, and what had transpired before that was we knew that in order to have this class, and this is really where it impacts you all, because the rubber does meet the road at the point of you have to have the time to be able, I mean, if you're going to integrate multiple classes, then it does have to look different. It can't just be one class period. And we knew in order to really pull off the project like we wanted, to do project-based learning like we wanted, to make it meaningful things that students are going out and doing and changing for the better, that we had to have more than just an hour every other day, or 2 hours every other day, really. And so I had actually worked a schedule out, and I was trying to pair up classes and match things so that it would work. And he's right, when I went in and I was trying to gauge the interest of who wanted to be where, it was sort of like they didn't really know what they wanted. And so it did turn into a very dark day, but the good news is the sunshine always comes back after that day. It goes down and it comes back. And so we're all very thankful for that. And it is critical. It truly, you all have to be on board with it because of the curriculum and the content, because of how we structured it in terms of their credits. They still have to have credits to graduate. They still have to have a transcript. We use standards-based grading, which is a whole nother challenge that we're working through right now. But all of the systems beyond that we have to respond to haven't changed. I mean, so schools still expect a GPA on their transcript. They still expect you to report that they've had English. And so we've had to have real hard conversations around what does that look like in our SPDM policies. We had to create competency-based policies that would allow students to demonstrate competencies, that they're showing and demonstrating, and they have the evidence to prove that they're obtaining the standards that they need to obtain in this process. Scheduling was a big factor because you're taking a group of students, and I don't think I shared this or articulated this clearly earlier, but these students are 9 through 12 with multiple different backgrounds, multiple different interests, that at least have one common interest, with this project. But they vary in groups. So while they did have to apply to get into this program, those that wanted to be in it initially got to be in it. Some of them had to apply for positions just simply because of the interest that we had. And it turned into 50 kids are interested in this class. How do we figure this out? So we hope that we can, do some different project-based learning as well. But scheduling was tricky because, they're not taking English. They've got to get English in the room, and we know that there are certain components that we can't even make it work. What was it, poetry? Is that the one? What was the one they're going to Ms. Christensen for?
Shakespeare.
Oh yeah, Shakespeare. Yeah, because that really doesn't fit in this work. And so we spent some time going, how are we going to fit it all in? And then we just sort of had this, we don't have to. When she's teaching Shakespeare, she's teaching at the same time. We're going to pull them out of our room and they're going to go get Shakespeare because we're not going to try to contrive something that isn't beneficial for them and that would stress us out. So we have enough of that. And so that was the yes and yes if. It's okay if they go out for a little while and get a little Shakespeare and come back. You really only need that in little doses anyway. So I think it's going to all shake out in the end and it will work out. But it does require a team of people really approaching it with an open mind, and I mean that in all sincerity, and you all are critical in that piece. You see students every day that are bored out of their ever-living minds in the schools that we have created because we went through them and we know them and it's super comfortable and it's easy. And so I encourage you and I challenge you to take what you have heard from these students today, to see what you saw in the beginning of the presentation, and that PBL isn't just something that's done haphazardly. It's very planned, it's very focused, there is an outcome, and it is very standard driven. And our hope is that we can do all of those things, and these students will be, and I have no doubt that they will because I have great teachers in place to make it happen. They're going to still be able to perform as well, I think, or better than they would have on the assessments that they're going to take anyway. And at the end of the day, we do have to honor the assessments, right? We're legally tied to the content. It's an expectation that they go. But at some point, I have accepted that if we'll make adjustments as we have to, but I'm not gonna let that pressure dictate doing right by kids. And so that's really the heart of the discussion is, am I as a leader willing to understand that, willing to know that people on the outside are gonna judge by those scores and me be okay with that? And I absolutely 100% am. No, we're not going to go in and blow off the test. No, we're not going to tell them not to try. We're going to do everything that we can to prepare them with the knowledge that they need to perform well on that. But even greater than that, to be able to apply those skills well beyond that end of course assessment. My hope is that in 5 years that I can come before you and not have students that were afraid to take a different looking schedule in class because of exactly what Cameron said. How are we going to prepare for that end of course assessment? And the crazy thing with that statement with Cameron is I had told myself, and we had said as a district, like, we don't push the test on them. And we don't. Like, they don't ever take a practice preparation test, ever. Not in any grade, not for Explorer plan, none of that. But yet the emphasis for them, when I had that conversation that day, and part of that dark day was me going, my gosh, we have created this. Like, I'm responsible for this. We've created students who are so concerned with, we've got to perform on the ACT and the ELC and the K-Prep and Explore and Plan, and, it's got to be this benchmark, that we've missed the boat. They can meet those benchmarks. They're not going to meet those benchmarks if we don't do things to get them there with the standards. And then, it's full circle. It's exactly what we're doing in the class. In fact, I would probably argue at this point, and probably could do so pretty well, that what they're getting is well beyond the rigor that they're getting in the traditional classes. Because I promise you, these guys are having to think and work beyond probably what they even expected at this point. Yeah. It's hard. Like, I watch them struggle, and it's so easy to want to do it for them. But I really believe that this is where it's going. I believe that schools do have to be different. And I am preaching to you only because these are my convictions that I have had. I feel like I've been in the field for a really long time, but I know that I haven't because I still have a long way to go. But I also know that I want the next 15 years to be 100 times better than my first 15, because I hope that I've learned enough to know, and I hope that I am able, to make the right decisions for kids based on what I've learned and based on where we want to be 20 years from now, not based on tomorrow, not based on May, because they're going to take the ELCs then. And so, in your roles, you guys are the people that are closest to the students and the teachers. You guys are there, right? When a teacher has a bad day, you know about it. When a student has a bad day, you know about it, because they're both probably coming to your office and crying. Because they don't come to mine, because I don't do crying very good. So I call Mackenzie and I'm like, somebody needs to come down here pretty fast. I've got a crier. So they know I'm not very good with criers. Not even my own 3-year-old. So we have a countdown, and it probably would not go well with the teacher. Until 5. And at 5, if I get there, you're still going, we're going to have a reason for that crying. It's tough. It is tough, and when you're in the trenches, when you're in the middle of the work, it's so hard to make that shift. I would be more than happy. I know you've gotten a ton of information. I don't want to totally overwhelm you, because that wasn't the intent. Mr. Taylor asked if we would present on PBL and what it meant, and really what impact you can have, and I hope that what we've given you today is enough for you to kind of start processing information. And when you have questions, email us. Email me, email Ms. Montgomery, Mr. Piercy, Ms. Kurtzinger. It has taken all of us to really make it happen. In order for them to get a technology credit, I also had to have a technology teacher. Now, I have that conversation with people. Okay, you have 20 kids in the class, and you have 3 teachers. You have Mr. Piercy plugs in when he can. You have Ms. Kurtzinger assigned there full-time, and Ms. Montgomery. Those are the conversations that I had to sit around with other administrators and have those conversations and really have to validate why that was important. Because they weren't in the trenches with me, and so it was very difficult sometimes to convey that. And I think probably teachers had some of those questions in the beginning. I think probably now that they're doing and seeing, that has helped. But it's lonely when you're making that change, when you're making that shift. And so, you guys have a great place to come and find comfort in the work that you're doing and get ideas and brainstorm. And don't be afraid to fail, really. Fail fast. We all fail fast, figure it out, get your boots back on, and start rolling again. That's really what I'm about now. I used to be paranoid, so paranoid of failing, so paranoid of somebody's gonna slip through the cracks, and that happens anyway. And so what I need to do is just, you know, if I think it's something that we need to try it. If it doesn't work, go back to the drawing board. I've shared that with, you know, students when I've messed up. You know, it happens, we're human. We just have to do it fast, and then do it better when we start back again. Do you all have questions? Yes.
So what credits do the students actually, is it, because I heard the English and I heard the technology, what credits do they come out with?
That depending on what they need, they all get English credit.
Right,
So all of them are getting English.
Depending on where they're at, correct?
Yes, and all of them get a technology. Some of them are getting half a history credit. I'm trying to go through my little, trying to think, I think there are maybe 2 or 3 of them that are getting half a
Where
history.
Piercy, I guess, is the history, I heard you say Piercy.
No, actually, the history is, we don't have the history embedded. We wanted to, but the teacher that we were actually gonna plug into the work relocated. And so that was kind of a hit early on, because we actually intended on it being English and history, because we felt like just with culture and geography, and there were lots of things that we could do. But she left, and so we did not do a history for everybody. The history that, like I'm gonna use Emily as an example, she's a senior and somehow ended up half a credit short in history. And so we feel like we're covering enough of the history standards in there that I'm gonna give her an elective history credit, for her specifically. And so we've made some adjustments for other students who maybe needed an extra technology, that are gonna be doing enough technology in this classroom to earn that. And it goes back to the standards. That's where Ms. Kirksinger has been critical, because what we have done is we have taken all of our technology courses, well, not all of them, but I'm gonna say it wrong because I always get it wrong, 3 of them, and embedded them into core. So in their core classes, they're all earning their technology credit if they choose to. So they can opt out, they don't have to do it, but if they want to go for the iWork certification, then they would have to opt in. And when they're doing the technology in their coursework, in their English, math, and science, they would have to be able to provide examples of how they met the standards. And then they would earn that credit. So we're a little bit different anyway, but it took her really designing those, what standards go where and what you're responsible for in order to earn this credit. It is, and once we had that part, then integrating it even over here became a little easier, because, okay, here's what they have to have for this. If you want an extra, then here's what you're gonna need over here for this class. A lot of individualism, in figuring out what it is. We've even talked about sociology. We've talked about others. You just have to have the right people and be able to free them up at the right times for it. Good question.
So how many class periods are they in? Like, what would a typical day be like for their schedule?
For them, they're in their 2 periods each day. So we are on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday schedule, but these students meet and unlock the first 2 periods Monday through Friday. And I'll tell you, my goal is to really get, I would love to be able to do half days, and I would love for them to be able to do all of their core in a PDL environment. So actually having a math, science, language arts, social studies on a team, and that team really, they're earning the credits, but they're earning credits through real world projects. So that's where I'm going, but we're just not quite there yet. Just trying to do little bits, and then it'll all just hopefully merge together. Yes?
Since students are tracking their own progress and monitoring their work toward the standards, then as a district of innovation or any district, why could we not apply for a waiver and call that independent study?
We do. I do have a few situations that are that way. So we do. We have done that.
Last question for you. The selection application process, because we know where it spreads, and then like you said, you have, instead of the few individuals coming to your door, it started off 100 showing up, the parents calling in, emails, and all that. What did the application process look like once it grew?
They actually had to come in and interview. Ms. Montgomery had them come in and individually interview, and some of them in the class. I can't remember how many spots we filled.
Yeah, I interviewed some of the kids dropped out after we said they had the interview. They didn't care enough about it to actually, because the interviews were in the summer. So they didn't care enough actually to come in over the summer and interview, so we got rid of some that we knew really weren't a good fit right away. Some of the kids came in and interviewed and actually got accepted, and then once they spent like a week in the class, they came to either me or Ms. Treese and said, I don't think I can do this. I don't think that this is right for me, and I don't think I can handle it, so put me back in my regular class. But the interview process was pretty simple. I just had some interview questions that I asked them. I asked them why they wanted to be in the class. I asked them what they felt like they could offer us. What can you bring to us, to our unlocked class? Why do you want to be part of us? What are your goals from wanting to be in this class? I just asked them a few simple questions. And then I gave them a little bit of an overview. I was trying to kind of warn them. I guess I didn't do as great of a job as I thought, since a few dropped out afterward, but I was trying to warn them about some of the work that we'd be doing and some of what would be required of them. And so the application process wasn't too difficult. We were going to do it initially together. It was just too difficult trying to get our schedules worked out together, so I just said, I'll do it. So I just interviewed the kids. So
Mine was different though.
Go ahead.
They got this class set up and stuff, and like they were keeping it kind of on the DL is what I call it. And I was in class.
Down low.
I was in class with Jared here, and he's talking about this class, and they're going to build a village in Africa and all that. And we had an assembly, and I hadn't got to Miss Treese yet. And I was standing beside my aunt. Miss Treese walked over there and talked to her. And I was like, hold up, what about this class? And she was like, oh, if you want to be in it, then you can be in it. So I was like, all right, because I want to be an architect. And I was like, oh, that sounds perfect. And she got me in it.
I don't like being called on the carpet.
I'm actually going to add to that. As part of the group that went to Ms. Treese initially, I had the pleasure of suggesting several students to be a part of the class, and so a lot of them were approached at the beginning, not necessarily application, but last year when we first began, they were approached, would you be interested in doing something like this? And thankfully most of them did. So
yes, she was on the front end. Emily has a real passion for missions, so I'm going to share that. And her conversation was, I do want to go to college, but I also really want to plug into some other things as well. And she was, she was part of those critical conversations that we had early on about what does it need to look like and what can we do with this.
We only ended up with 3 freshmen in the class, but the freshmen, we actually did the same thing. We took a look at our upcoming freshmen and said, these are kids that we think would be really good leaders, and we actually invited them to come and be interviewed. And so several of them did come. I think the freshmen, a few of them were the ones who ended up dropping out once they got in and they realized it was maybe a little bit more than they could handle right after that. But we did have 3 that stuck with us, and they've been an awesome addition. They've been awesome leaders. It was really great that I don't know, Ms. Treese, we were talking, and we only have 3 seniors in our class, and we were thinking, because a lot of our seniors, they're opted for the program that we have in Bellarmine, where they are going to, get to go to Bellarmine and actually earn college credit. And so we started thinking, and we're like, well, if we get all of the kids in this class, and they're all upperclassmen, and then once they get to be seniors or even juniors, and they decide they're going to go to Bellarmine, who's going to be leading this class? We said, well, we need to start making leaders out of freshmen. When we get freshmen, we need to start at we need to have, kids representing every level so that we have leaders from every level. So
That was definitely a residual effect that I wasn't anticipating as a leader. When you're sending all of your top students, to the early college model, and you're trying to do interventions and things back home, there was a dynamic there that was sort of in my face last year. And so we said we just really need to do a better job of offering things to, even 8 through 10. What are we doing differently to prepare them and get them into the model? And so we did. We have already had some conversations around what that needs to look like, because this is a project, our goal, and they know this, is not to end. Is to keep it going long term. I hope that when they exit, it's still going, and that they're proud of what they have done and created, because really it has been them making it happen. But to see the success, but we also know it is a long-term project. So these students are going to be hopefully they choose to be in the class next year and continue with their work. We actually have 3 students who couldn't be here today because they are in Bellarmine. And Bellarmine wasn't so gracious this time when I asked if they could miss a midterm. And so they actually had to get on the bus and go to Bellarmine today, but they plug into this class also. Mary Tess was one of them. I think you saw her jump in this credit seminar. So there's a lot of diversity in this group, which makes it even more fun. Any other questions? All right. I've dazed and confused them. Now back.
And we certainly want to thank you.
Yes, yeah.
A big thank you. You're an awesome group.
Oh.
Thank you very much. I would like for, as we transition here, if you're sitting in one of our deluxe chairs, roll that